You're about to see behind the scenes of an exclusive interview I did with the founder of Supply-Block. His name is Stuart James. Now, there's a couple things you need to know. Number one, I'm in no way, shape, or form compensated or remunerated for doing this interview. In fact, Stuart was recommended to me to do an interview with by one of the very followers of this YouTube channel, Craig Felt, who also joined the call. Now, point number two, this was done across the globe in South Africa. So South Africa's had a lot of flooding and the connection went in and out a little bit. So don't worry about the quality of the video. Just pay attention to what Stuart is saying, because there's some really interesting stuff he's working on there. And me, someone who's actually looking for great businesses to invest in that offer potentially massive return, this was one of the ones on my radar. In fact, right now, this is the top of my list. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, not because I want to go shilling any ICOs or blockchain startups, but there is a real business here that is a business before it is a blockchain solution, and it is going to be offering investment opportunities. So I wanted to raise awareness for Stuart James from Supply-Block because I loved his mindset, I love what he's doing, and I love the fact that he was recommended to us by one of the wizards that follow this channel. Without any further ado, let's get into the interview. So wizards, we're very lucky today because I'm joined here with Craig Felt, who is a fellow wizard on the YouTube channel. He actually reached out to me through the arbitrage tool that we built here. And Craig has actually connected me here with Stuart James. Stuart James is running a very, very exciting initiative right now in the blockchain space in South Africa. And he's been kind enough to get on here, do an interview, talk to us a little bit behind the scenes of what he's working on and why, what's going on in South Africa, what are the projects that he's launching, his focus on adoption, etc. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff in this interview. And we're very, very lucky to have actually both Craig, who's one of our wizards over here, and Stuart on the call. So gents, thank you very, very much for being here today.
No problem, Sean. Thank you for having us.
No, that's awesome.
It's on a live corner. Well, not a live call, but being recorded.
Well, Craig, I got to tell you, Craig, you are actually the first viewer of the channel, or somebody who views regularly on the channel, who's actually now on a video on the channel, which is super cool. So no, it's been really, really great. And also I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had behind the scenes too. I know you're super keen to be working more and more in this space. I know it's a space you're very excited on. One thing I need to just make very clear for viewers, because I know people are going to be, there are some people that can be skeptical about interviews, etc. You guys need to know that this interview today is not sponsored. There's no paid, there's no incentive. This is not a marketing strategy of any kind. This is really just talking about value and talking about some interesting stuff going on. And we're very, very lucky to get behind the scenes. Stuart, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump straight in with yourself and ask you, what is this Supply-Block that I'm hearing about? What is the initiative? Where did it come from? And just take us into the detail, man.
Yeah, no problem, Sean. I mean, maybe if I could just start with a bit of background as to, why it's come about. And, we're all aware that the key process to any economy worldwide, I think, is the procurement process. So there are a lot of companies playing in the distributed ledger space when it comes to supply chain management. But very often they're merely just businesses, to be quite honest. They're getting product from point A to B. So what we did is we looked and said there's a whole process that takes place prior to that, and it really is the nerve center of an economy, and it's called the procurement process or competitive bidding. Sean, a World Bank stat is such that over 20% of global procurement spend is wasted due to inefficiencies, irregularities, and that type of thing. In a country like South Africa, it's as high as 60%. So, it's billions of dollars that are being wasted globally that can be pumped back into an economy if things are done right. So, we found that the current industry challenges that we face is that there are really no holistic solutions out there from a technology point of view. And those solutions that are out there from a procurement online sort of, web-based procurement solutions, they're generally on misaligned old and legacy or inadequate technology, which is inefficient, it's very slow, there's a lack of transparency, all of those things which open themselves up to or susceptibility to fraud and corruption and irregularities and manipulation and all that type of stuff. So that's the sort of background to how and why we started developing this program. I've been playing around in the blockchain space for some period of time. I think anybody that professes to know it all is certainly, they don't exist yet because the technology is changing so quickly. I think from a South African perspective, we certainly see the applicability in our environment and our economy and the benefits that it can lend to it. So, I mean, to answer your question, really, Supply Block is, it's really an online competitive bidding or tender solution that's integrated with blockchain technology. And we're all aware of the efficiencies that blockchain technology brings to it in the sense of, the transparency, the security, the efficiencies, which are time, money savings, all that type of stuff. So it's a web-based platform that connects basically buyers and sellers in a very secure and transparent environment. Sean, it's a customizable platform. It's modular in application depending on what the user needs are. So it really is a user-friendly and efficient solution. And of course, it is holistic in nature, which means somebody who's either building a tender or a bid system, and there's also users that are obviously bidding on the bid on the same system, which means it is holistic, and obviously you can adopt things like automated scoring and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So just to bring it back into for dummies language, because this is the language I need to understand things and speak in. Really, in my experience in supply chain, just getting down to brass tacks and basics, the reality is that there are a lot of inefficient systems, as you said. There are people that are, transacting still based on carbon copy pieces of paper. Some people aren't even using computers still in their filing system. There's a crap load of duplication, which causes a lot of issues. I think when it comes to supply chain in freight, there's something like, I don't know, $600 lost per container. Which doesn't sound like much, but when you add it up for the country of Australia alone, that's like $1 billion. And that comes down to those two things you mentioned, duplication and transparency. So really what you're saying is by putting the process on the blockchain between the various parties involved and getting product A here to over here, what you're really saying is by putting it all on the blockchain, you have one version of the truth. And there's no room for error. There's no room for duplication. Everything's transparent. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, Sean. But let me just, clarify that from the point of view of obviously putting it on the blockchain. It's a very lengthy, extended process that takes place in terms of that integration process. So, the first port of call is very much sort of setting up your traditional business. And when I say that, making sure that your systems and procedures and the application of it obviously all work properly before integrating with blockchain technology. So yes, there are certain aspects of it that from day one will be adopting blockchain technology, for example, payment gateways and things like that, hence tokenizing the business. And as those systems and processes are refined to an extent whereby they're 100% accurate, that is when the implementation with blockchain will start taking place, or the integration with blockchain. Sean, to be quite honest, it's very difficult to build on a blockchain from day one because, as you know, it is an immutable ledger, and if things are done wrong from day one, it's all very well trying to go back and change it. It's not really possible.
Right. So is supply chain a protocol in its own right, or is it being built on top of Hyperledger Fabric or something like that?
Correct.
Okay, it's on top of Hyperledger Fabric. Cool. Yeah.
Yes. So for example, the technology is changing to an extent. Initially, when we started the project, we would literally have had to have built our own blockchain over a period of time. It was about a 4-year project. What's happened is, due to the advancement of technology in the short space of time in which we've been operating, which is just over a year, it's about 14 months now that, the project, there was a lot of research obviously prior to that, but in terms of actual development time, it's about 14 months. And Sean, over that period of time, as I say, the technology's changed to an extent and matured to an extent whereby, and it is still early days, whereby it's probably reduced the time frame of our project to about 18 months. And we will be using the things like exactly that, Hyperledger, etc. Amazon have recently bought out their blockchain. Right. Yes, there are deficiencies in it, but we would be able to utilize or adopt quite a lot of their blockchain. There are other blockchains out there from a document management point of view that make a lot of sense to us. So yes, you are correct.
Well, I'm interested in it because I'm actually studying Hyperledger Fabric right now myself. I actually love it. I know that, IBM, SAP, all these big companies have been involved in actually building out that protocol. And you're right, Amazon Web Services have adopted it as well. So, you know, from a blockchain perspective, the blockchain you've decided to build this on, number one, I already know it has a proven track record. I know that on average, about 200 blockchain solutions are built per year with IBM. So IBM being the supplier, helping people develop these solutions in supply chain, etc. So in other words, it really has great track record, and it's really good to hear that. One of the other things you mentioned, actually before we hit record and we got on this call, really what was interesting to me is the word adoption. You know, since day one, this is something I've been going on about on this channel. You know, any business or technology is only useful if people actually use it. And you mentioned that adoption is a key focus of yours. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that roadmap playing out? People actually adopting, working with you, you know, getting their systems and processes integrated into this infrastructure you're building. How do you create adoption? What triggers that?
Okay, Sean, I mean, it's a very good point, and it's probably one of the biggest bugbears of any new project out there, technology, blockchain-based project, where a lot of these companies have an ability to raise vast amounts of money over very short spaces of time. But what they battle with is the user adoption side of things. So you or I may invest in a project, but are we actually ever going to use the technology is really the question. So maybe they get a 2 or 5% adoption rate, and they battle to get that pipeline of business. What we've done is we've looked at the environment from a South African context point of view. It's a unique environment. And what we have is we have issues such as Black economic empowerment that need to be addressed. They are legislative issues in the country. So what it means is that in order for companies to do business in a country such as South Africa, they have to have certain BEE, they call it Black economic empowerment criteria. And they need to be dealing with certain Black businesses as suppliers, etc. So one of the things that is unique to South Africa is enterprise and supplier development. Now, enterprise and supplier development make up over 40% of the BEE scorecard. So it's an essential aspect to be addressed by any company that's serious about doing business in South Africa. But what it does, it provides an opportunity for us to introduce a company or technology such as SupplyBlock. Because currently what happens in the environment is that the spend by corporate South Africa on Black businesses is often not auditable, it's not traceable, the resultant effect of the spend is not known. The true purpose of broad-based Black economic empowerment is not taking place. So for example, a company says, we have $1 million to spend with a Black business, they spend it on one business as opposed to spending $100,000 on 10 different businesses. So you're not getting the broad base of transformation, as it were, which is what the government and country are after. So what SupplyBlock is able to do is now to be able to, through the tokenized, let's call it business case, we're obviously able to track the spend, we're able to audit the spend, we're able to see what the resultant effect of the spend is, et cetera, et cetera. So what we've landed up with is a situation where effectively for corporate South Africa and again, it's a compulsory spend, it's 3% of after-tax net profit in enterprise and supplier development, so it amounts to huge amounts of money. For them to be able to spend that money on Black businesses, we would need to profile the Black businesses. For that money to be given to the Black businesses, the corporate would need to register on SupplyBlock, and vice versa. For the Black business to receive the money, they would need to register on SupplyBlock platform as a supplier. Likewise, corporate South Africa to transgress from or transfer from supplier or an enterprise environment to a supplier development, they would also then need to register their tenders or their competitive bids. They would need to build on the system and offer them to those suppliers to whom they've given money. So it gets very technical, Sean, and I don't want to get too technical with it, but what it means is that you're getting user adoption from both ends, the donor of the funding and obviously the recipient or beneficiary of the funding.
Fascinating. So, and I know I'm going to be editing this, I'm going to be watching this, I'm going to be playing this back again, because one of the things that fascinates me about blockchain is how it can be applied where there can be some difficulties in a political environment in certain countries that can actually really do with having this ledger of trust to solve problems. And that's clearly what you're doing here. What it sounds like you're really doing here is not only are you helping to solve the supply chain issue in South Africa, but you're also using South Africa as your starting point. Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a win-win scenario that you can really play on to get the adoption. So it sounds to me like that's the strategy you're going with here. This is why you've chosen to start in SA.
Yes, you're 100% correct. I mean, the cost of doing business is a lot more cost effective in South Africa when it comes to development and things like that. We also have some really good developers here. So although a lot of the work is obviously being outsourced to unique skill sets overseas, the majority of it we can actually contain within the South African environment. It is very affordable when, you know, comparing to other countries out there. And of course, South Africa provides this unique environment in which to build a business case that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do.
Right. Yeah, right. Got it. So what are the steps now? Who are you speaking with? What interests are you getting in this solution that you're building right now? Have you been just doing this by foot, networking over the last few years? What are you doing to actually get people aware and make people aware of the solution you're building?
Okay, well, maybe if I can just take it a step back in terms of answering that question, Sean. So, I mean, what we've decided to do is we're doing things very differently to your standard project playing in the space. You know, what we've looked at is we sort of asked the high level questions. You know, does Supply Block solve a real world problem? You know, does it have international application? I mean, a lot of projects are often restricted by or limited by geographic sector. You know, does it have multiple industry application? Absolutely. You know, every industry procures. You know, have we got a developed prototype that has been tested in a sandbox environment? Do we have a pipeline of business? Can we drive token value through everyday user adoption as opposed to hype and marketing, etc.? So, you know, we've answered all of those questions, and we believe we've got a unique offering when it comes to implementation, which is not far off of the technology. You know, so we're also, you know, we're delaying, for example, exchange listings and things like that until we have sufficient market traction and proven user adoption.
That's interesting. Let me slow you down there. Sorry, let me just repeat that. Make sure I got that. You're delaying it. Can you talk about that a bit more? Let's slow down on that point. Why are you delaying it? Yeah.
Well, let me give you an example. Part of our research is obviously chatting to companies that are playing in the space. And seeing what they've done, what sort of school fees they've paid, etc. And, you know, other projects, what happens is they're often encouraged to list prematurely on exchanges. One can understand why. It's because generally their investors, or when I call it investors, their funders or early adopters want exit and entry options in terms of being able to cash in or out when they want to. The challenge being is that a lot of these companies or projects or technologies, they list on very low-end exchanges. There's no listing fee, for example, or very minimal listing fee. And of course, the challenges then start when suddenly there's a problem in terms of investors maybe not getting their tokens, whatever it may be. And really then the negativity sets in and the usual sort of FUD sets in, and it becomes a bit of a mess. The other problem they face is that the guys that you want to get to, your big traders, your big crypto, traders, they're not going to list on some obscure exchange to get your token. There are too many other good opportunities out there. So what we've done is we've done it very differently. We will delay an exchange listing for as long as we need to. We want to become attractive to a credible exchange, the bigger exchanges out there. How we do that is by going to them with a proven track record. We can show them what sort of market traction we're getting, what user adoption we're getting, what token adoption we're getting, the trading volume on a daily basis, the clients we're dealing with, etc., etc. We suddenly become of value to them. And what we obviously believe is that the bigger exchanges can give one far more marketing, or let's put it this way, they can give one far more visibility than you would get through pumping money into marketing. You know, so a lot of these companies raise a lot of money, 80% of it is spent on actually propping up the value of their token. It's not a sustainable model as far as we're concerned. We do understand, of course, that investors or early adopters will be looking for exit options, and we've designed 3 exit options for our early adopters or our investors. The first exit option will be us actually going to them when we implement and offering them an increased value on their token. They then have a choice as to exit or exit a percentage of their holdings. The second option will be an in-system exchange that we will be developing. It will be a private exchange. Investors will be able to obviously list however many tokens they want on that exchange, and almost like a higher bidder, they can release the tokens to. And the third option is basically then going and listing on one of the bigger exchanges. I think, Sean, to answer the question as to, how are we getting visibility and what are we doing for marketing? We're not wasting any energy at this stage over that. It's pointless. We're dealing with some really big major corporate companies and banks at the moment. And I'm sure I can name a few for you. But before I get there, I think just to understand that there's no purpose for us until we've listed on one of the bigger exchanges in terms of announcing anything. It's not going to help us in any manner or form. What we're going to do is we're going to have a pipeline of business. So by the time we do list, we have a pipeline of business, and on literally a weekly basis, the good news factor will be released.
Okay, so I wanted to get into the investing side over here, because from listening to you, and I'm going to be absolutely honest here, I am absolutely going to check out more about your business here and what you're doing from an investment point of view, me personally with my own money. And I'm going to tell you why. And the reason why I'm going to do it is because you're not starting a blockchain solution here. You're starting a business. And you're giving people the opportunity to invest in a business early on, which is based on the blockchain technology, which we know right now the ones that make it are going to provide exponential value from an investment point of view. So I'm now coming from the point of view of an investor. The other thing I love about it is that it's really business to business. And you're not focused on, one of the things that really sold me here listening to you is that, and I know you're not here to sell to me, but it does sell to me, is that you're not focused on marketing. This is the opposite of what a lot of ICOs, et cetera, are doing out there. You're focused on getting traction. And,
yes,
for me, that sounds really, really, really good. So I'll definitely be looking more into that. But I wanted to just ask Craig very, very quickly. Craig, how did you actually meet Stuart? How did you come across Stuart in the first place and SupplyBlock? What brought you two guys together?
Well, I met Stu through as a coffee shop at a local church called Victory Coffee Shop,
Awesome.
not far from where I stay and work. And when I first started going to this coffee shop, believe it or not, I got involved in BitConnect, as many people got sucked into.
BitConnect.
Yeah. So I put a lot of money in there anyway. But I know Stu from the same coffee shop where I got introduced to BitConnect. That's how I got into crypto, in fact. And that was my entry into crypto.
So you've had your hands burnt, though. Sorry to pause you there, Craig.
Yes,
you, like many other people, millions of other people, have had your hands burnt. So you must be pretty skeptical at the moment about what you're putting your money into. I'm hoping.
Very skeptical. That, and I still haven't, I'm yet to make any profit in crypto. I've only ever made losses, but I'm very emotional. I'm not a good trader. But I love the idea of arbitraging. I know it's difficult. It's not easy to do,
Yeah.
It's all time. It's all based on timing.
Yeah, and, I love that you said and you're so honest about it too, which I love, that you've only made losses in crypto, yet you're still here. And I want to just take this point to traders watching this, because I know we have a lot of traders that follow the channel. A lot of new traders out there, if you're thinking of paper trading, that's not how you learn. Losing money is how you learn to trade. So Craig, sorry, I wanted to make that point. That's a really good point. Please continue.
Just to add to that, lose small amounts, play with smaller amounts of money.
Yeah, try not to lose everything.
Yeah. So it's very, so it's risky. So I know Stuart from there through a mutual friend of ours, Peter Miller. Good friend of ours. And I know Stuart used to work at the business park, which he's just moved from recently, next door to the coffee shop. And the office block next door, and Stuart worked there. He's just moved offices recently. But so that's how I know Stuart from there, from mutual friend from the coffee shop.
Why are you interested in SupplyBlock as an investment point of view?
Because I trust it. It's the first real person that I've met in person in South Africa, developing a product, not trying to hype it up. There's an investment opportunity there, but there's no hype. He's literally, as you've gathered from Stuart, he's not hyping. He's an honest, genuine person that's developed it sounds like an amazing product. And anyone who doesn't invest in that, I would think is a wasted opportunity. I mean, it's the type of product you don't have to put a lot in, but you can get a lot out of it. You know, the type of investment. But it's more in terms of, you know, if you're from South Africa as you are, you know the issues we've got with corruption and fraud here. So you
can we talk about that a little bit? Can we go into that a little bit? Because I've been living in the UK since I was 12 years old. The last time I was back in SA was 2004, a long time ago. You know, I had a cousin of mine who's just immigrated here to the UK. I was chatting with him. What is the state of South Africa at the moment?
Well, our load shedding's been cut down a bit. We had load shedding a few weeks back, and it's all to do with corruption, because our power company is not paying for the right materials, or the tenders are going to, you know, contacts and through hands they shouldn't go through. So they're not being supplied the proper coal, et cetera, to burn for electricity. It's going to the wrong pockets. It's just manipulation of money. And yet our power station, so it's all government controlled. Obviously, our power station is run by the government. It needs to be privately owned, but that will be virtually impossible to do because the government obviously controls everything. So in terms of corruption, it's massive. And that's why us as South Africans end up suffering because of the corruption. Taxes go up, electricity goes up, you know, that type of thing. So we're the ones who end up suffering, and we don't have an effect to change it. We don't have a sort of power to make a change in it. But when you look at something what Stuart's doing, his product solves the problem of fraud and corruption in tenders, because there's a lot of tenders that don't go to the companies they should generally go to. They go to the contact of the person who's in control within the foundation organization. You know, they're getting a little backhand commission in the pocket, whatever it is. And that is massive in South Africa. And we only know about what we hear of. We don't hear of, there's a lot of stuff we obviously don't hear about.
Mm.
But, you know, it's that type of thing. So corruption is rife, unfortunately. But the products like this, that are like supply block, that are utilizing blockchain, it is game changing. Not just in terms of an investment, but in terms of changing the environment, you know, giving the people a chance who are genuinely fighting for that work and for that income, giving them that opportunity that it's going to go to the best, you know, sort of not the highest bidder, but it's going to go to the person or the company that has the best product or the best service or that type of thing. You know what I mean? So
definitely, man. I get chills listening to that point, because for a long time, you know, I've looked at blockchain as a ledger of trust, one version of the truth, and self-auditing. I mean, you know, blockchain is also a big threat in the audit community. In fact, you can see companies like Deloitte, et cetera, jumping on top of blockchain because, you know, it's like when broadband came out and telephone companies were like, it doesn't matter. And now everybody just uses broadband. You know, so it really makes sense from that point of view. And so I get chills listening to you talk about that, because in reality, you're right. You know, the right use of blockchain, especially in a business to business structure, because at the end of every business is a consumer anyway, really does make sense, because there's really no room for a lot of corruption from that perspective. So not only do I think that you're right in that it can solve the problem, I think that it's important that we make it solve the problem, because I don't see another solution out there that could provide that level of security and trust. Stuart, what do you think on that?
Yeah, Sean, I mean, you're 100% correct. And I mean, I go back to the point of exactly what you made. I mean, our first sort of premise upon which to enter into the business is, can this business stand on its own 2 feet, or the technology stand on its own 2 feet without blockchain and without tokenization? And the answer is yes, very much it can. But what does blockchain do to it? It obviously puts it on storage. And what does tokenization do to it? Well, it obviously has all sorts of advantages in terms of being able to run the business more efficiently. And I can elaborate a bit more on that if you'd like. You know, traditional mechanisms of raising funding have proven to be totally inefficient. And often what happens is that the original founders of whatever technology or businesses may be land up with very little of their business at the end of it. In terms of, you know, venture capital or whatever it may be, angel investors taking more and more equity. Also, there's a large emphasis through to the traditional methods of funding to you know, show profits very early on, and understandably why. They want to see returns, but it often makes those businesses less competitive in the market. Whereas, with the emphasis being on the token appreciation and not on profits, it enables the business to operate more competitively, which ultimately means, bigger user or more user adoption. If there's more user adoption, there's more demand for the tokens, and more demand for the tokens obviously would indicate appreciation in those tokens. So Sean, the blockchain brings a unique, I guess, set of rules or different rules to a business environment, particularly like in procurement. That's not to say that there's not going to be resistance in a procurement environment. There is, because there are too many people making too much money through the inefficiencies and irregularities. But certainly those businesses that are serious about doing business and doing it more efficiently and effectively, and obviously, reaping the benefits from a cost-saving perspective, they will adopt it. And we have some rather big businesses that have agreed to implement.
Yeah, I want to actually put some of my own 2 cents into that point as well, because I totally agree with that. My experience in working for big corporations, big US corporations that report on the street, they're responsible for reporting to shareholders, feel a lot of pressure. And, the minute that one company has an edge, their earnings per share growth is, better than it was projected. Obviously, that influences more capital to be put into that business. They're essentially winning in the stock market. And what that means is shareholders say to all the other companies they're investing in, why aren't you doing this thing that's cutting cost and improving your earnings? Or why aren't you doing this thing that's growing your top line and improving your earnings? And so my thoughts here on the blockchain, and I've said this for a long time, but I'm going to say it again, is that really when you look at the next 3 to 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to see a lot of business-to-business adoption. I mean, for crying out loud, SAP have been working on the Hyperledger Fabric project, right? So we're going to see more and more companies adopting blockchain, especially in supply chain. They are going to save money on the bottom line. I mean, Australia is projected to save, as a country, just on freight alone, $1 billion a year. 1 billion. That's a massive amount. So these companies are going to be saving money. That's going to improve their earnings, meaning that other companies are going to have to compete. And to compete, the only way they can compete is to get up to speed with the same technology. And so I think, from my perspective, it's going to start with just a few not smaller companies, but just a few companies adopting, blockchain in supply chain. But once they're getting results and cutting costs, it's going to be popular for everyone else to be a copycat. But I see this playing out over a 5 to 10 year period. I don't know about you, Stuart, what your thoughts are in terms of the timing of how this all plays out.
Sean, yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to try and estimate the timeframes in which it plays out. I do believe that the crypto space is a bit of a bubble. I believe that there are a lot of projects out there that are actually offering nothing other than hot air. And I do believe that unless somebody can prove that their token and their value lies in everyday utilization and adoption, and that their technology actually does solve a real world problem, and that they have developed something, I don't believe they're going to be around in the next 2 years. In terms of obviously blockchain adoption, I think that the technology is changing or maturing at such a rate that there are quite a few businesses that are sitting back at the moment and saying, well, let's wait until it matures to a certain level until we actually get engaged or involved in it. And they don't, not all businesses have the resources, I mean, from the point of view of the specialist expertise that is required for a lot of these projects as well. So Sean, it's very difficult to say or attach timeframes, I think in terms of where one goes with it. But what we certainly seeing is even at a very high corporate level in South Africa and internationally, there's now, people are paying attention, let's put it that way, where they certainly weren't 2 years ago.
Let's talk a bit about this. You did mention name dropping earlier, and I know you're not here to name drop, but I'm interested to know what names, like who have you been involved with working with from an exchange point of view, from a business point of view? Are there any names you're okay with disclosing for the interview?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we need to be very careful. I mean, we've signed a non-disclosure agreements with most of the companies and organizations with whom we're dealing. But there are a few, I think, that wouldn't mind us, mentioning a bit about them. I mean, for example, we've been accepted onto the RCS BNP Paribas Bank It's their Level Up Business Accelerator program. What they've done for us is there's obviously an allocation of development funding that they've ring-fenced. What RCS, BNP Paribas have done for us is they've given us office space in Cape Town. It's really premium A-grade office space. You know, it's all free of charge, as it were. They've given us access to their professional services, for example, lawyers, accountants, all that type of stuff. They've agreed, obviously, to be a test case for us in terms of implementation. And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but there's certainly an indication that they're looking to white label the product as, you know, a bank product for their particular customers, etc.
Wow.
Obviously, I just need to be very careful what I say and who I speak about. But there are a lot of, you know, there are a lot of lobby groups in South Africa with whom we're dealing very closely, and they've certainly given us letters of endorsement and lending support to the project. One of them is the Black Business Council. They have over 2 million members in the Black Business Council. They represent Black business in South Africa. So they've been instrumental in terms of obviously assisting us with our, let's call it our enterprise and supplier development implementation model. We're also dealing with companies like Empower Logic. They're one of the bigger verification and accreditation audit agencies in South Africa when it comes to, you know, the rules around Black economic empowerment. We've joined forces with a company called DeToy & Co. They're an escrow business. So we're building an escrow platform, which is the escrow platform is just another area of the development we're busy with in terms of extending and expanding the development with regard to the technology. Yeah, so Sean, we're getting some good traction, and we have a number of other interested parties, other interested countries throughout Africa. But it is early days, and I guess the rubber hits the road when we implement. So what the Black Business Council and various other stakeholders have agreed with us is that we agreed with them what a minimum implementation spec must look like, or minimum viable product, i.e., you know, an organization must be able to build a tender or a competitive bid on the system. You must be able to publish it on the system. You must be able to bid on that tender on the system. It must be able to auto score. You must be able to put up your bill of quantities and materials, etc., etc. You must be able to advertise on the system, etc. So we've agreed all of that, and that minimum implementation spec, it should be ready for market by the end of May. So we're not far off, and we're talking about obviously the Black Business Council through Corporate South Africa underpinning the value of the token when we implement, and they're looking at, I know nothing's paired to a rand, so this is a negotiation we're having with them. But they're looking to underpin it at a rand, which is equivalent, it's about the equivalent of about 7 US cents, at which it would be underpinned. So yeah, it's all good things. And those are just some of the people with whom I don't think they would mind us talking about. We've also taken on quite a high-powered CEO. He was the regional CEO or managing director of a very large IT company in South Africa. They turn over about 17 billion rand. He's joining us at the end of May as well. And then we've got a couple of companies, you know, international companies with whom we're dealing. We have a very strong advisory board. I mean, we've got people such as Al Shepard. Al Shepard was the financial controller for the US Justice Department. He's one of our advisors. We've got the chief operating officer of a major European bank as another of our advisors. We've got change management experts. We've got he's one of 8 or 12 members of the International Blockchain Committee. He's on our advisory panel, etc. So, yeah, Sean, anyway, I mean, I think what I'm sort of saying is it all lends itself towards, you know, a degree of credibility, which many of the other businesses out there, I think, are battling with. As I say, we also never went to market or spoke to anybody until we had actually created a beta version, which has now been totally rebuilt for the purposes of the minimum viable product that we're taking to market. And yeah, we're very excited about it. As I say, we have several, let's call it test cases, businesses that will be tolerant of errors, mistakes, etc., that have agreed to work with us in terms of getting this to market.
This is a really, really good point. And I want to just stick on this for a second. You know, in any business startup, it's very, very important. And this is really for the community watching this right now. It's very important that you don't just build a product and assume that people will come. You know, it's not build it and they will come. It doesn't work like that. You really need the market to drive what you build. And so, you know, Stuart, when I listen to you speaking here, again, it's like Craig says, it just rings the bells of truth to me. really what you're doing is you're working with the market to build the product, not enforcing the product you've built on the market. And I think that's a very, very, very key point. And in my opinion, the reason why most businesses fail isn't because of cash flow. It's first because they have a very poor product market fit. But when you're working with the market and you're building in what they want, then the product can't fail. You know, then it's something else. If your business doesn't work from then it's something else. It's going to be cash flow. It's going to be something else. So I just wanted, sorry, Stuart, to interrupt you. I just wanted to stick on that point because I think it's very, very important that people understand why you're taking your time, why you're going through this adoption process, why you're building the product with people that are happy to be, I'm going to use the word guinea pigs, but it's a very important point. I already had, one other question for yourself at this stage, Stuart. And, what would be really cool is as this project evolves and continues, if it's all right with yourself, Craig, yourself as well, it would be cool to do some updates maybe as well, just so that the community can be kept up to speed with your progress. But the question I was going to ask very quickly here is, from an investing point of view, from anyone who's considering investing in businesses right now like yours, where can people be kept up to speed with your progress, with the adoption side, with any good news? Is it on your social media? Is it on a Twitter? Is it on your LinkedIn? Is it on supplyblock.io? Where is the best platform for them to go to keep up to speed with what you're doing?
Sean, what we've decided to do is obviously we haven't really kept the market abreast of what's happening. Up until now, it's been more EDMs from the point of view of personalized emails to people. They've been very generic type of EDMs. We obviously have some quite big investors where we've got a more personal relationship in terms of giving them more privy information. But again, what we don't want is we're very anti the viral nature of what social media can sometimes generate and create. And that's certainly not what we're after. Ours is very much personal relationships up until the stage where we do want it to go viral. But we believe that stage will be on, upon exchange listing. So prior to exchange listing, we will update our community in terms of an EDM. It's a restricted database of people. It's not via Twitters. It's not via LinkedIn's. We do have those presence, and we may post articles of interest in terms of the blockchain space and that type of thing. But it's certainly what we're not doing is we're not posting about SupplyBlock. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So really, you're focusing on the few and cultivating the real world adopters rather than spreading your efforts into shouting about how great you are on the internet, which is what pretty much every other. And it's funny because I went on a Facebook group. It's got like 77,000 people that follow this Facebook group in cryptocurrency. And when you scroll through all the posts, and my marketing, my friend and marketing business partner, Chris, just laughs at this. Every single post is just a link to an ICO. And if you ask a question, someone just posts a link to their ICO, assuming people give a shit, which they really don't. And so the internet has been very much about, hey, look at me, look at me. And what we're finding is that the businesses that do focus on building real world relationships are the ones that are winning right now. The businesses that do focus on providing value. So when I'm going into these groups, I just provide value. I don't ask for anything. They do win. So to get onto the EDM, people just sign up on supplyblock.io, or do they have to have already invested? Like, how do they get these EDMs?
No, not at all. Sean, so all they need to do is register on the SupplyBlock website, which is www.supplyblock.io. They can register there. From there, obviously, they will get the EDMs, etc. Again, we prefer to almost have an introductory type of email from people. If it's from an investor point of view, we like to know who we're dealing with, not just from a regulatory know your client perspective, but more from the point of view of a personal relationship in terms of there's several parties out there that can potentially add a lot more value than just money. Money is not what we're after. It's establishing a really viable beneficial community as opposed to taking people's money.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But that said, investing is fun. So Craig, all I'm going to say is if I put money here into SupplyBlock and make a fortune, I'll buy you some beers and a barbecue, brother. How does that sound?
Yeah, we'll have to do some traveling.
I don't mind doing traveling. I don't mind doing traveling. If Stuart makes me a fortune over here.
From the UK.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm definitely coming from the UK. I got to bring my son is 13 years old now as well. I got to bring him back to the motherland just so he can see where his roots are from. So.
Yeah, but to Durban, not to Pretoria, eh?
Not to, well, I was thinking Durban and Cape Town, anywhere where I can surf, you know, so I love surfing. I'm rubbish at it. So yeah, if Stuart, if we invest here, we make a ton of money, we're going to come and see you in SA, brother. Thank you.
Great.
So I did just want to
say, irrespective.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. We absolutely must. I just wanted to say, number one, thank you very much, guys, for taking time out of your busy mornings, your busy schedules to give behind the scenes value to the community, because this right here is real value. And like you said, Stuart, not hyped, just raw, just real. I have, from just meeting you for the first time, I have absolutely zero doubt that you're going to be successful. Like everything you've been lining up here sounds like it's absolutely poised and positioned for success. So all I can say at this point is thank you for being on here. I'm going to be following what you're doing, and I'm wishing you every success. We're right behind you on this.
Sean, thank you very much.
Sure.
Much appreciated. It's been great.